Greetings and salutations. Crappy Carpenter here. So, I am going to try to make this a little bit more entertaining while I'm working and tell stories and anecdotes while I am working on this project. Story. How I made it to where I currently live in Las Cruces, New Mexico. It's quite a story. So, I grew up in Grand Haven, Michigan, lived there my entire life, got married there, we bought my mother-in-law's house, and we were there for, 15 years after we got married. Well, my mother-in-law, who sold us the house, wasn't doing really well. So, my wife did not have a job at the time. So I just suggested to her, maybe if she was interested, she could come down here and take care of her mother. I've always thought of doing something like that with my mother, so that's where that came to my mind. And we just knew that if we put her in a home, she'd probably be dead within 6 months. And we wanted her to be happy, so we thought her and my wife get along so well that we thought it would be the best way to go. So she moved down to New Mexico, and here I am in Michigan. I was working from home. I was a computer programmer, working for Hewlett Packard. Great place to work for. So this happened in January. Now let me take a break here, and we're going to put some pilot holes in this platform that I'm building, and I'll explain the platform in a minute or two. Let's get this going. Okay, now I'm using 2 drills because I have 2 drills, and I think I mentioned it before. It is so much easier if you don't have to switch bits only 10 times instead of 20. So once we get this going, too close to the edge. Let's see if that works. Okay. So, I was talking about my mother-in-law. My wife moved down to Las Cruces because this is where my mother-in-law was living in a home. She was living in a senior home, but it was in an apartment with her own stove and everything else. So they were going to have to move her to a full one where they took care of her and everything else, like a nursing home. And that was really expensive, and it turned out that if she had more than enough money to rent a full house, a nice one, with all the money and pay for utilities and everything else, with that money instead. So she got a house, and my wife moved in with her. And of course we paid for our fair share of groceries and things, but a lot of it was, my wife was taking care of her basically. Well, it was kind of rough being without my wife. 10 months later, I got a email message saying, yeah, we need to have a quick meeting in 10 minutes. And it was with my manager and another manager I've never talked to before, but I knew it was a higher up manager, and I'm like, uh-oh. I knew exactly what was happening because they were splitting. This is when HP was splitting into 2 companies right after they did that, and I knew there were layoffs coming. And sure enough, I heard during the meeting, yeah, you're getting laid off. And they were so surprised. I was so nice about it because I've been paranoid. I'm a paranoid kind of person. I get I get worried about things and think about things that most people wouldn't worry about at all. And I was always worried about losing my job, even though I was doing a good job. And so when it happened, I really wasn't that surprised because I was prepared for it for the whole time, the whole 15 years I was working there. I was expecting to get fired just because, like I said, a little bit paranoid and I worry about everything. So I lost my job, but the good news was because it was I was there for 15 years, I got a decent severance and that kept things going for quite a while. But at that point when I lost my job, I said, that's it, I'm moving to New Mexico. And I was considering it before, but I had no reason. Our daughter moved out of the house, so I had no reason to go and no reason to stay. And I thought it was just going to be for, you know, a few years, as long as Stephanie's mother is alive, and she was in her 80s already. And it could have been 10 years, you know, I was prepared for that. So we moved down. I moved myself down here. It took a long time to get the house ready. And, but it all worked out. It wasn't sold when I left. I'm going to put this screw in there. And that is pretty much, it's recessed, it's countersunk. That works. And I'll do the next one. So I ended up selling the house and leaving for Las Cruces 2 days before Christmas. Christmas has always been real important to me, so I wanted to get here by Christmas, and I ended up getting here Christmas Day at noon, and it worked out perfectly. And then, like a week or two later, we found out there's someone who wanted to flip our house for us. They paid for our mortgage. We just had to wait to get the equity until he sold the house. And that took a year. But we didn't have the house payments anymore, so it wasn't a big deal to me. But we got what we asked for, and it ended up working perfectly a year later. So that's how I ended up down here in Las Cruces, New Mexico. The thing is, her mother died a couple years after we got here. Why am I still in New Mexico? Well, yeah, I happened to get my dream job. I'm a huge NASA fan, as you probably saw by pictures with my NASA jacket on, wearing NASA stuff all the time. I've been a huge fan of NASA for most of my life. And yeah, so the funny thing is I applied for all kinds of IT related jobs, and I wasn't getting any bites because the IT field's not good in New Mexico at all. So don't move down here for the IT jobs unless you go to Albuquerque. Albuquerque might have some, but not this particular area of Las Cruces. So I applied for several IT jobs, and I got a phone call, and I applied for a number of jobs at the White Sands Missile Range. So I went ahead and applied for these jobs, and I got a phone call. On the caller ID, it said NASA, WSTF. Found out later that stands for White Sands Test Facility. But my wife saw NASA, WTF. She goes, Curtis, the phone says NASA, WTF. And I'm like, WTF? NASA's calling? Yeah, definitely WTF. So I talked to him, and it turns out the data analyst job I applied for, which is pretty low level. Data analyst jobs are usually pretty low level. Not where I was as like a computer programmer, but I was willing to do anything, especially at a missile range. I said I'd even sweep the floors. Nothing wrong with sweeping the floors. My mother was a cleaning lady. It's a good profession, but I said I'd even do that. Well, Turns out NASA needed a data analyst. I talked to them, they're like, this is for NASA. And I'm like, what? You said data analyst? I said, oh, okay, yeah. And I realized, and I did know that there was a NASA facility in Las Cruces, but I didn't know what they did. Turns out they test rocket engines, okay? Rocket engines. Oh my goodness. Just a second here. I'm gonna turn this thing around. So you can imagine I was just a little bit excited when I found out about that. Turn this thing around. Don't me. Doesn't want to turn easily. Getting splinters in hands. I really should wear gloves when I do this. But you know, sometimes people don't learn. There we go. So I can do the back side here, and I'm going to put the clamp back on. And I'll show you this stage closer later. It's a, my wife wanted a shelf that goes this way. So it turns out she said she wanted it 13 inches wide. So I made it 13 inches wide, not realizing that the bottom part is where she wanted it to be 13 inches wide. Oops, my bad. So I made this stage so that I can use the back face of this beam as well as the front here and give her that 13 inches she wants for the shelves. So that's why I'm building this up and not putting it on base level. That, and it gives us things to hook our vertical boards onto too. So that's a good thing. I'm glad I bought this clamp. I needed a really long clamp, and boy, this is handy. Harbor Freight has clamps cheap, and they work really good. I got a couple of clamps from Harbor Freight. Walmart, I got a cheaper one from Walmart, which is good at holding things on, but when you're doing high torque items like doing the pocket screws with this thing, the cheap Walmart and the one that they gave us with it did not hold. I got this with my kit. It did not hold. Too much torque. So, and this one from Walmart did not hold too much torque even for this one, even though it's big. Now, the other one's like this one, just smaller. The one I was using, and you saw it if you were watching the other video. So I'm going to clamp this in. These aren't as easy to use as the pull trigger ones because you can get it close with this little trigger, but you have to hand tighten it, and it's not easy, but it's not that hard either. So I'm clamping this in here just so I get a good connection. Okay, and now I'm going to screw this in. So NASA. Let me get these screwed in, and I'll talk more about NASA.